Now, Baker suggests here that we need sensitivity. If you're not sensitive, if you're not aware of the demands of the classroom as a teacher, then you're not going to support every learner. And you need to provide learning opportunities for every learner, because every child matters and it's the children's right to have an education. And if you look at the national strategies, they're pretty tough. There's some things in there they ask you to look at, the nuances of English, such as funny phrases like kick the bucket. How do you describe and expect a child to do that if they don't really understand it culturally? So if you understand that the cognitive demands of the curriculum are pretty fierce in some cases, we expect children to be problem solvers. We expect children to be reflective. And now we expect children to be creative. If so, how do you provide that learning opportunity for English as an additional language? Now, the first thing is to find out where they're at. So it's a measurement. How can you measure if a child has acquired a language? Baker has a threefold threshold, but this one here is 4. Now, if you think about it, the first one is stage 1. It's where you have survival language. If I picked you up and threw you into Croatia, the first thing you'd think about, okay, where's the toilet? The next thing, when's my lecture? The next thing, how do I get there? Now, if you're on holiday, however, and you're anything like me, you wouldn't ask the loo, you'd say, where's the bar? Or lots of chocolate, if I'm in Belgium. So basically, what you want to think about is survival language. Children I've worked with, it usually is things like swear words as well, because that is survival language. Someone's picking on you, the first thing you learn when you're learning English, especially if your child is a swear word. Not nice, but it is. Second, basic sentences. General communication, so you're talking about Coronation Street, you're talking about X Factor, because these are cultural links. You know that they're talking about football, so you learn football language. Any football manager or football player that goes into playing for Manchester United, Everton, whomever, you'll notice within a year their language is fantastic, and you're thinking, gosh, why? 1, because they're immersed, 2, because it's all about football. It'd be very interesting to see if they can actually talk about, I don't know, quantum physics. Stages 1 and 2 take about 2 years to get proficient at. 3 and 4, abstract thought. The national curriculum asks us to get children to be abstract thinkers. And yet, it's only a level 3, or stage 3, stage 4, who's able to be a thinker, an abstract thinker. So this is where they're thinking outside of the box. They're putting an opinion across. And then finally, level 4 is where you are linking with fluent native speakers. Now think about Great Britain. Different regions have different accents, and different regions have different fluent native speakers. So what is considered to be a proficient? You're not expecting the Queen's English. You're expecting a child to be able to communicate. And remember, if you take it back to those couple of slides, you're having to be proficient in English, in speaking, listening, writing and reading. Fluent speaker for your age group and your levels. Now, the way you do that is you understand culture and you understand jokes. So I'm going to say a few jokes. I am hopeless at jokes. But I've downloaded these off the internet, and they're not rude, so don't worry. And basically, we have to make sure that they were clean and they were child-friendly. So let's see how I really apologise because they're quite lame. What did the elf use to make him taller? He used elf-raising flour. Okay. I know, I'm sorry, there's that. Okay. How do you catch a squirrel? Climb up a tree and act like a nut. Teacher, give me a sentence with the word analyse in. Pupil. My sister Anna lies in bed until 9 o'clock. Okay. The reason you laughed, 1, because you're a bit sad, but 2 is purely because you understand the cultural references. Okay, that's the difference. You have to know what a squirrel is and understand that squirrels like nuts, and that's why you're acting like a nut up a tree. Okay? You have to know what self-raising flour is to understand what an elf is. And so obviously you know that's the cultural reference. You have to be good at cooking to know that one. Okay, do you understand that though? It's the cultural references. If I move on, Nabil, stage 2. Nabil was year 4. He was a cheeky chappy. a lad who was enthusiastic to try but got off the task very quickly. He would get really like, oh yeah, I can do this. I'll do drama, I'll do role play, I'll have a chat. Well, I have to write it now. Oh no. Nabil is a boy who we had to work with by doing lots of interactive role play, hot seating, discussion, chatting, lots of different sorts of activities, and he loved that. And then he had somebody else to scribe for him and with him, mixed ability groupings, so that yes, he was stage 2, so he could communicate with somebody, but he was fearful of writing. And having a friend who he could work with, who was slightly more proficient at English than him, he was then able to be more confident and understood the skills of writing because someone demonstrated it for him and with him. The next child is Usman. Usman was a boy who had SEN, and I want to make this distinction clear. There's a difference between English as an additional language and special educational needs. Special educational needs is something to do with learning, something to do with cognitive ability sometimes. Sometimes it's a physical need. English as an additional language is a barrier to achieving learning, but it's not an intellectual thing half the time. Now, what I said about Cummings earlier, you have to be proficient in your mother tongue. Usman was having difficulty. He was at stage 1 still, and he was in year 4, and he'd been in the school since he was in nursery, and we were really concerned about him. So I asked the local support service to come and assess him in his mother tongue, which happened to be Urdu. And they assessed his mother tongue, and they found that he didn't know his colours. He didn't know his basics of numbers in his mother tongue. He is year 4. He didn't know basic structure of writing or reading in his own language. Well, no wonder he's having trouble with English. Once we knew that, we could put all the strategies in of supporting his learning, such as interactive teaching, mixed ability groupings, etc., but also provide him with an individual educational plan and special educational need focus, because there were 2 different issues and both were barriers. So visual learning helps children. It makes them understand how to develop, how to improve, what you're going on about. It makes it context embedded. So I'm going to show you a video. Now, this is someone speaking Croatian. Aha! And he is going to read a familiar children's story. Every primary school teacher should be familiar with this story. If you're secondary here, I challenge you to work it out. Are there any words in there that you recognise? Any words in there that you're familiar with or a pattern in the language? And also, see if you can work out what the book is.
Idemo u lov na medvjede. Ulovit ćemo jednog velikog. O kakav divan dan. I nije na strah. O, šuma. Velika tamna šuma. Ne možemo da idemo preko nje. Ne možemo da idemo ispod nje. O ne. Moramo ići kroz nju. Op, pup, op, pup, op, pup. Idemo u lov na medvjede.
Okay, I would like you to turn to your talk partners and share what book you think it is, and is there a word that you recognise?
I thought it was Willy Goat's Gruff. Going over the bridge, I thought it was saying breakfast.
Okay. Any volunteers? What book do you think it is?
Well, I got Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and Susanna and Anne thought that it was Going on a Bear Hunt, so we both got bears, but...
Okay. Pass it on to somebody else, please.
We all think it was The Three Little Pigs.
Anybody else?
Going on a bear hunt. We're going on a bear hunt.
Why?
Because of the repetitive language.
Okay. Right, true Blue Peter fashion, let's find out.
Idemo u lov na medvjede. Ulovit ćemo jednog velikog. O kakav divan dan. I nije na strah. O, šuma. Velika tamna šuma. Ne možemo da idemo preko nje. Ne možemo da idemo ispod nje. O ne, moramo ići kroz nju. Op, pup, op, pup, op, pup. Idemo u lov na medvjede.
Right, first question. Which method helped you understand the story? Okay, so show of hands, how many of you understood it better with the visual aids? Show of hands, please. Hands down. How many of you understood it without the visual aids? And we've already said, somebody mentioned repetitive language. Okay. Question. Which method do you think a child would understand? Hands up if you think first without visual aids, second with. Second, who thinks that? Okay, hands down. First, who thinks that? Hey, I'm teaching something. Bonus. Okay, you're getting that. Basically, yes. But why? Talk to your talk partners and discuss why is it that the children and you understood the second example better or more?
Because they need visual cues. If you're using English as an additional language, you need visual cues.
Right then, any volunteers as to why? Anyone would like to give an explanation as to why you think the children understood the second with visual aids more than the first, or why you did even?
It goes back to the saying of the picture paints 1,000 words, so it's easier to follow pictorial cues without understanding the language.
Fantastic, yes. Thank you. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Visual aids, interactive teaching, repetitive language, all of this supports learning. The third section of this lecture looks at how we can support pupils who have an additional language but also have asylum status or refugee status in Great Britain. And is getting trainees to reflect on how when children have English as an additional language, they may also have learning needs that are emotional, and that also has an effect on how they develop their language acquisition. So I want trainees at this point to start thinking slightly further of the theories that we've already talked about. How is this going to impact on your teaching and their learning? That's what we need to reflect on. Because a child who comes into the UK with English as an additional language, fantastic, we can support them. But there's this emotional literacy, an emotional need that needs to be supported. Many a time these children have come from harrowing situations that need to be then understood. And if you have no awareness of the country or culture they're coming from, and even don't know the history that they may be an asylum seeker and why, then really you may automatically think there's a problem because it's a language barrier, when actually it's an emotional barrier. So at times they go hand in hand and we have to be aware of it. And here are two personal examples. I'll start with Scanter, political refugee. He was year 2 and his father wrote something, I don't know what, but something that was political and pushing the boundaries of what's correct and right in his country. And so he felt his life was threatened. As a consequence, him and his children and his wife moved. Now, they didn't come to Great Britain straight away, they moved somewhere else. And there, they were also victimised. And they ended up in Great Britain where they were not victimised. They were supported by the local community. They were encouraged to be part of the society, and they were. They were educated people. But he had English as an additional language. He was stage 3/4, I would say. He actually had very good language, fantastic, lovely discussion, because he had a very good grasp of his mother tongue, and he could write in his mother tongue. But he had an issue where his status of whether he's staying here or not is going to affect his learning. The other two, Marhad and Omar. Marhad came from a big family, Somalia, and he would get very upset quite a lot and be quite aggressive in the classroom and in particular outside. I didn't know his full story, apart from he came from an area full of fighting and he saw things that he shouldn't have. So he had English as an additional language, but also this personal emotional crisis. Omar, fascinating boy. He basically was put in year 6, yet we believed he actually is a 14-year-old. And he shouldn't be in primary school education. Yet many a time, children come into this country and we don't know how old they are, and they don't know how old they are, and they don't have a birth certificate. So we put them where we think they're going to go and they're going to be supported. And he was supported, very much so. But he had trouble communicating with people. His frustrations, because he was frustrated because he couldn't say what he wanted to say. He wanted to say, I am cross, but didn't have the language. He wanted to say, I am hurt. And what actually came out was aggression, fighting in the playground, lots of swear words. Lovely, funny boy. I liked him a lot. But again, we had to make no allowances and think, this boy has a lot more of his needs, and his language needs to be acquired so he can learn English and develop in the curriculum, but more so, he needs this language to talk about emotional literacy. He needs to share how he feels. And when he's got a grasp of that language, then maybe we can support his emotional needs. So asylum seekers, we need to be aware of. Education Act 2002, asylum seekers and refugee children have the same rights to an education as native-born British speakers. They should be given the same opportunities. So it's a legal duty for local authorities to support these children and provide safety and education. Pupils recently arrived from overseas should not be included in performance tables, which is fascinating if you think about it. We are table-driven, assessment-led in some cases. Yet children with an additional language will have an effect on your performance table and your GCSEs. So the local authorities, the governments have said they shouldn't be part of it because it will skew it. So really, refugee status, asylum seekers, all this is what we need to be aware of. The final section is top 10 tips, and they're there to an overview of some of the things that we've talked about. It's a little bit of a conclusion, and so that people can go away with and think about what we can do. And it finally ends with me speaking a little bit of Welsh. So, top 10 tips. Use visual aids. Use non-verbal communication as well. Don't underestimate it. Don't underestimate body language. Children do respond to it. Remember to put them in the middle ability group until you have effectively assessed their learning capabilities. Just because English is a barrier doesn't mean they're not intellectually able to do with it. Many teachers put English as an additional learner into the lower ability because it's a reading ability or a writing ability. No, please don't do that, because you don't know how cognitively able they are yet. So put them in a middle ability if you have to, because then they'll have children who are proficient to an extent in language, be able to support each other, learn from each other, and the child will become more confident. The barrier for EAL is usually language. Turn something that's a problem-solving activity, turn it into a hands-on, hot-seating activity, turn it into a drama, a game, make it concrete. Mixed ability groups, put the child with EAL in the middle of the three. A, B, C, they're B. Because they will hear it from both sides. A child will talk across each other. If you're in a 3, it's likely that the 2 will work together and the 1 will be left out. So if you put them as A or C, they're likely to turn their back and not be part of it because they're having difficulty understanding. If they're in the middle, if they've got a pen or a pencil and they're in charge of it, then whew, I have a role. I have to pay attention. So be aware. Always try and plan for context-embedded work. Make sure that they understand what they're doing and why. Buy a dictionary of their language if you can. It's a really good idea because conversing on a basic level makes a difference. If you are their significant other and you're their teacher and you come with a grasp of, hiya, how you doing? How amazing will that be? Always remember where they have come from and cultural differences. It's not wrong, it's different. Ensure you're sympathetic to a child's refugee status. You understand it, especially if it's not confirmed as yet. And in particular, their emotional needs. Interactive teaching lessons. We do lots of this at Edge Hill Uni. We talk a lot about interactive teaching and what that means. Learn about it. Use it. You'll see a difference. Take time to watch. We don't have enough time observing kids. And sometimes I know you groan when we say, please go and observe children in your classroom as one of your tasks on block. And you go, oh, yeah, okay. But there's a reason. Because by watching, you learn lots about somebody, especially when they're not aware. Because of body language, because of things that they're too shy to say to you, but they'll say to their mate. So, chwala na llwydiannau. If you're not sure what that means, diolch am urando, or thank you for listening. The overall message, the fundamental message I would like a trainee to come away with is a child with English as an additional language is not thick. They actually just can't speak English, and that they have an intelligence that they shouldn't underestimate. And so put them in the middle ability group first, and then start evaluating what they need to do to develop their English.